Hello everybody and welcome to Forever Motorsports on Forever Sports for the British Grand Prix preview. I'm joined by Reese and we're going to look forward to what's happening this weekend in Silverstone as we get to one of the most famous and most anticipated tracks on the F1 calendar, of course the British Grand Prix. Reese, we're going into this weekend, of course Max Verstappen yet another win last weekend in Austria, and Ferrari and were dealt a bit of a bad hand with regards to Sainz getting time penalties, but otherwise seemed to do all right, but weren't quite as quick as the Red Bulls. We saw Aston Martin struggle a little bit, Mercedes coming up as well, but not really doing very well either. So it was a bit of a harsh Grand Prix for most, but otherwise, what could we expect as we get to the British Grand Prix?
Yes, well, it certainly was a difficult Grand Prix for the majority of the grid, especially with all of those time penalties added at the end due to track limits. Hopefully we will not be getting a repeat of that this weekend. We'll have to wait and see whether drivers are just going to be as strict as possible on those track limits as to not get any more penalties like they had last weekend. But yeah, I think Ferrari certainly will be wanting to keep the momentum going through to this race weekend in Silverstone. Mercedes will be wanting to pick up the pace a little bit, especially at their home Grand Prix. They'll be wanting to get on the podium here. McLaren seem to have some good pace as well. We'll be seeing Oscar Piastri getting that set of upgrades now that Norris got in Austria. So hopefully those two will also be able to compete for the podium places.
Yeah, and of course, British Grand Prix here, we've got some stats about it. It is one of the most highly anticipated, and I do laugh because Sky Sports goes and says, why Silverstone's the best Grand Prix in the calendar? I'm saying, of course it's the best one for you guys, you're British. Yes, but it is, to be fair, one of the most anticipated and one of the most enjoyable races and one of the most watched races in the calendar every year. That is the British Grand Prix. Largely also because the time zones are very good for most people to watch, as well as it is right in the home of where most F1 races come from and where some incredible races and teams all come from. Of course, this has been dubbed a home Grand Prix for quite a few of the cars, lots of them based in Britain as well. So, It's going to be a very, very cool Grand Prix. I've just got some stats here about it. So it's been held 77 times and was first held in 1926. That's the British Grand Prix. Most wins, Reese, come on, take a guess.
Ayrton Senna.
No. So teams.
Oh, sorry, teams. Mercedes.
Yeah. No, of course
Ferrari?
not. Ferrari, yes. Ferrari seem to have the most wins at almost every racetrack as a result of them being in F1 for so many years. You've got 18 wins at this racetrack. It's quite a few. Most wins, though, goes to home driver Lewis Hamilton. He's had 8 wins here in Silverstone. Now, hopefully you can try and attempt to get his 9th this weekend. It's going to be damn difficult for him, but he's definitely going to try it out. Laps, there will be 52 laps. The race length is 306 kilometers. It's a long track. It's a bit of a longer track than most. It's 5.8 kilometers, so almost 6 kilometers in length.
Yes, interestingly enough, the Silverstone Grand Prix is the 5th longest track on the Formula One calendar at 5.8 kilometers. As you said, Spa-Francorchamps is 7 kilometers, Jeddah is 6.1, Las Vegas is 6.12, and Baku is 6 kilometers on the dot. So 5th longest track on the Formula One calendar.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a longer track, and we also did that. We do a gaming stream and we go and race around in anticipation of the weekend that comes. And you do just feel there's a lot more turns, of course, you have to think about for drivers, and it's far more difficult in terms of making sure they get the perfect lap. So I think qualifying could be very interesting. Not only that, it's obviously in Britain. Summertime Britain, which means that we are likely to probably have a bit of rain maybe, or otherwise it's Britain, as I say, so rain is always a possibility. So that could
be the third weekend in a row with rain.
Yeah, I mean that's what we're going to wait and see. So it's looking like it's going to be a great weekend of racing. And do you think this could potentially be the first weekend without Red Bull on top?
Well, I mean, I've got some stats for Red Bull this weekend. Max Verstappen is set to make his 150th race start this weekend, so he'll be wanting to have quite a good weekend off of that. As well as though for Red Bull, they are, of course, doing so well. And I think I did see a stat here. I might have just lost it. No, here it is. Yeah. If both Red Bull drivers secure a podium result at Silverstone, it would mark the team's 250th podium in Formula One, which means they've become only the fifth team to do so after Ferrari, McLaren, Williams, and Mercedes. So Red Bull will be wanting to have a good weekend here. I think Max Verstappen certainly has the pace to do it. He's been so strong the entire year. So strong, in fact, in Austria that he was able to make a free pit stop and just get the fastest lap for fun, really.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing is Red Bull are so dominant this season so far. So it could be a very historic weekend for the Red Bull outfit. Max Verstappen, his 150th race start, and Red Bull potentially in their 250th podium in Formula One. So a big weekend in store for Red Bull if they can pull it off. But of course, this is the home circuit of Mercedes, Toto Wolff's team. They know this track very well. Lewis Hamilton knows this track exceptionally well. It's a home Grand Prix for both their drivers. So both drivers are British, so it's the only team with two British drivers. So it's going to certainly be the entire crowd will pretty much be rooting for that Mercedes team. I was going to say the Silver Arrows, but the Black Arrows, I suppose you can call them now. So do you think they stand a chance? They're bringing a lot of upgrades supposedly, as Toto Wolff says, and also it is a much lower altitude racetrack, which means that hopefully their engines should be fine as well. So can they compete with Red Bull?
Well, I think Hamilton will certainly be hoping for a good weekend off the back of Austria, where he was just so frustrated with track limits, as well as the car just not performing how he wanted it to. He didn't have a great practice session, didn't have a great sprint race either, and then qualifying was, again, dismal. I mean, Hamilton has always started in the top 6 at Silverstone and finished within the top 3. So, I mean, ever since the hybrid era with Mercedes. So I think he'll be wanting to keep that record going, but whether he can, it will be quite difficult.
Yeah, so Lewis Hamilton at home, can he go and compete with those Red Bulls? He doesn't only compete with those Red Bulls, though. He does have to compete with the likes of Ferrari, who seem to be making a bit of a turn in their season. I grant, not as quick as they'd like, and I think a couple of small things still keep hindering their chances. But Charles Leclerc, very comfortable second place in the weekend, and Carlos Sainz did finish further up, but in 4th position, but then obviously penalties took him down into 6th, which is a bit harsh, but nonetheless, it's ultimately what happened. So they had a decent weekend there, and they had a very good weekend in Canada after starting 11th and 10th, finishing 4th and 5th. So they're moving in the right direction. So they finished 4th and 5th, they're now finished 2nd and 6th, would have been 2nd and 4th. Could they potentially challenge Red Bull?
I think off the back of Austria, they seem to be quite confident in not only high-speed circuits, but also in circuits with a little bit more downforce that is needed. So I think this track is a mixture of both. So it could certainly suit them quite nicely. Charles Leclerc will be wanting to do well. He's very confident around this track. In the past 5 races that he's done here, he's finished in the top 4. So, I mean, I think he really does enjoy the circuit and does quite well around here.
And also another team that seems to be dropping off a bit in terms of where everyone's basically been watching and hoping they'll do well is Aston Martin. I mean, what are they going to look like this weekend?
Well, they've been better at higher speed tracks, so hopefully they will have a bit more pace around here. I think they've also got a big upgrade package coming, if I'm not mistaken. I know they did bring a big one to, it wasn't Spain, Canada it was. So hopefully they can bring a few more bits of upgrades to this circuit and just get a little bit closer, because they have fallen off the pace a bit.
I mean, Fernando Alonso is normally a quick qualifier, and he's a quick qualifying driver, and yet he's struggled to get anywhere near the top 4 positions in the last couple of Grand Prix. I mean, it's a circuit he knows well, of course. He's been in Formula One many years. I mean, what are Aston Martin's chances? I mean, if we just had to predict where they'll finish up, because we know Mercedes are bringing upgrades, we know Ferrari are improving, it's Red Bull, of course. Where's Aston Martin fitting into this picture?
Well, to be very realistic, Aston Martin is, of course, mostly held on the shoulders of Fernando Alonso, so he would be our most likely podium sitter for Aston Martin. And Alonso hasn't stood on the podium here since 2013, so it's a bit of a tall order for him to get on the podium here, but if anyone's going to make it happen, it is Fernando Alonso.
Yeah, and of course, another British team. I mean, we talk about Aston Martin. It is a British team, essentially. It's the British car company, of course. Mercedes are based in Britain. Alpine are based in Britain. Red Bull is run by a British man, been Christian Horner. And we've got McLaren. Now, we talk about McLaren. is also a British, brand and things. So lots of British influence here in the British Grand Prix. The orange, well, I say the orange McLaren. It's brought a special livery for the weekend, a chrome. It's disappointing considering what we thought it would hopefully be, but they're bringing a
But it's not too bad, I don't
no,
think.
but they're bringing the special livery, the chrome and orange livery, for this weekend. I mean, they did very, very well in terms of Lando Norris, at least, last weekend. Do you think they could be like the dark horses of the weekend? McLaren seems to have turned a corner in terms of their pace. Their pace has ridiculously changed.
Yes, I mean, at the beginning of the season, they were nowhere, and now they qualifying really, really well and getting consistent points finishes. So hopefully they'll be able to fight for the podium a bit here. I mean, we saw Lando finishing in P4 with those driver penalties at the end of Austria. But on pure pace, it looks like that he is able to match the Ferraris very soon.
Yeah, and what's also interesting is McLaren seem to have found race pace, which is the big thing that they've been struggling for as well. So it's a really, really cool Grand Prix, hopefully, going into this, because it could be anybody's race. Of course, Red Bull are still firm favourites, but not by as much of a gap as they have been throughout the season, I think.
Yes, it's definitely fallen from what it's used to be. They've become a lot more competitive. I mean, if we look at, you're still talking about McLaren, correct, Mark?
Well, just generally, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely have picked up the pace a lot from the beginning of the season to now. I mean, they were finishing pretty much 19th and 20th at the first 3 or 4 races, and now Lando's doing really, really well.
Yeah, so I was just saying more like all the teams, it's going to be quite a competitive Grand Prix with regards to Red Bull. Still firm favourites, but all
Yes.
the other teams, it's they're much closer to Red Bull now. So, I mean,
Are
by how
they?
much could Red Bull win by, or is it going to be a slam dunk?
I think it's still going to be a slam dunk, unfortunately, Mark. I mean, Red Bull, you say that the other teams are getting closer, but Max was 24 seconds ahead of Leclerc in Austria, and that was, if I'm not mistaken, there was a safety car, wasn't there?
Yeah, just right at the beginning of
Yeah,
the race, though. Right in the beginning, second
then
lap.
it would have
So
been maybe a 30-second gap
no,
without the
I think
safety
it
car.
might have added an extra second. But anyway, it's absolutely fine. Red Bull's still a very strong outfit, of course. But let's hope and let's see if anybody else can sort of get anywhere near Max Verstappen in that Red Bull. Of course, they're still competing with Sergio Perez, though. But we'll see what happens this weekend. Now, in other news, Brad Pitt is putting together a movie, an F1 inspired movie called Apex. Everybody's very much looking forward to it. And they've revealed the car ahead of the Silverstone Grand Prix. Yeah, I mean, it looks incredible if you guys go and have a look on social media. Otherwise, I mean, how excited are you about this film?
I mean, it's certainly going to be quite exciting to have some filming taking place on a race weekend. It's something we've never seen before. Um, I'm sure the film will be very good. I think Lewis Hamilton is a co-director of the film, so he'll be making sure that it does stay true to what motorsports is. Uh, so it should be very interesting. I mean, we've seen other movies in the past, like Rush, based on Niki Lauda and James Hunt. That was a brilliant film, but there were just a few little inconsistencies to real life. Hopefully, with Lewis Hamilton being involved, it should stay a lot more true, because I think it is slightly based off of his life story.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, we move swiftly on, but yeah, Lewis Hamilton is a co-producer on in that film, and he wants to do the sport proud, and he's nervous of what people might think of it, but he wants to try and keep it as true to F1 as possible. So we all look forward to that as it comes, hopefully in the future. And yeah, very much looking forward to that. And as I say, go and have a look at that car. It looks very, very good for what they're trying to do. And
Gold and black, it certainly looks very, very great.
yes. And now we go on to the F1 calendar has been announced for 2024. And there are going to be 24 races in 2024. The Chinese Grand Prix has returned, and every other race in this weekend and in this season's calendar remains. So we've got 24 races, but it's quite a bit of a different schedule. We see the Japanese and Chinese Grand Prix come right near the beginning of the season rather than near the end, as they always have been. So, I mean, have you seen the schedule? I mean, what do you make of the schedule?
I have seen the schedule, and I understand now. I have done a little bit more digging into why they have set up the schedule in the way that they have. It's mostly for logistics. So we start in Bahrain, uh, then we go across to Saudi Arabia, then down to Austria, and
Australia.
then, oh, sorry, Australia. And then I think while we're in Australia, the stuff from Saudi Arabia and Bahrain is getting sent across to Japan, um, which is the next race after Australia. Then we go to China. Quick logistics move from Japan to China, at least. Then all the Australia stuff would have been sent across to Miami in America. So then the teams will fly out to Miami for race 6. Then by then, the stuff in China gets sent across to Emilia Romagna in Italy. As you can tell already, it's extremely, extremely crazy logistics that get involved in Formula One. So from Emilia Romagna, Italy, we go across to Monaco, then Canada. So, of course, all the stuff that was in Miami gets sent across to Canada, which is why we jump in continents quite often, because you need to give the logistics time to move from race to race. I mean, we can keep going across the rest of that calendar, but I think you get the gist of it now.
I mean, the problem is that with that entire logic with regards to logistics is that it's not really logistical, is it though? Because if you think about it, we're going Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, then you're having to send stuff to another country completely in advance, and you can't take everything with you. Whereas if you'd start a Grand Prix basically going across the world, in a manner that just basically aligns as it goes across, wouldn't that be a bit easier?
The whole reason they're doing it is to try and reduce carbon emissions. So they prefer to send stuff before time instead of moving things back and forth the whole time.
But wouldn't really necessarily be moving back and forth if you started, for example, in Japan, then went to China, then went to Australia, then went up to Singapore, and then went. If they just went across the whole world like that.
You say that, but you have to understand sometimes not everything is sent by air. Some of the stuff is sent in advance via shipping containers. A lot of the stuff for the paddocks, all of that, like the wheel guns and all of that stuff, gets sent a lot more ahead of time. So that stuff takes a lot of time, especially to races like to Australia and to the Americas, Qatar. I mean, it is a bit of a logistical nightmare, which is why they have partners like DHL.
Yeah. So the F1 calendar, 24 races in 2024. It's going to be hellishly busy, and all of the Grand Prix are very, very close to each other. There's barely a break at all. The first break we only see in August next year for 3 weekends, and then we immediately return. So it's not exactly like it's...
I mean, it goes all the way to I think it's the 8th of December is the final race in Abu Dhabi. It really does go right to the end of the year.
Yeah, so
it starts in March and ends in December.
February, technically. So the 29th of Feb is the Friday. So
I didn't see that.
In February and goes all the way to the 8th of December. So a very, very long calendar in F1. So we're very much looking forward to that as F1
We say it starts at the 28th of Feb. Don't forget we have pre-season testing as well.
Exactly. So lots and lots of Formula One action coming to us in 2024. But we are still in the 2023 season, and just a little piece of news as well with regards to one of your favourite drivers, the fact that Mick Schumacher has completed his maiden McLaren F1 test in Portimao. Now, the former Haas driver Mick Schumacher has conducted a test with the McLaren Formula One team in Portimao as part of his 2023 reserve driver role. Schumacher took the wheel of McLaren's 2021 MCL 35M car on Wednesday as part of F1's so-called TPC rules, which allow tests with 2-year-old machinery. The test is part of Mercedes' arrangement of sharing its test and reserve drivers with McLaren, which takes customer engines from the German manufacturer. In previous years, it had agreed a deal with Mercedes to call upon Stoffel van Doorn and Nick de Vries in case it needed to replace one of its race drivers for the 2023 season. That deal was extended, with incoming reserve driver Schumacher being made available if either Lando Norris or rookie Oscar Piastri is unable to race. So he went and completed the Portimao test and got up to speed with how the McLaren works, having not worked with the working team before. So he's getting around the block now. He's tested himself in the Mercedes car. He's now gone and tested the McLaren. So certainly still staying within Formula One.
Yes, certainly still being very, very active within Formula One. Often we see him on the grid, sitting behind Toto Wolff, looking over his shoulder during a race as well. But I mean, even when we don't see him, he is still extremely, extremely active in the Mercedes simulator, doing a lot of work for that Mercedes team to be able to fast track upgrades and do setups for race weekends. So his job is extremely, extremely important, even if us, the public, don't see him.
Yeah, so Mick Schumacher getting some good practice, I suppose, in the McLaren. So he's ready for any possible thing that should happen to either Mercedes team or the McLaren team. Reserve driver for both teams, of course. And yeah, we're about wrapping things up for the preview this weekend in Silverstone. Very much looking forward to it. Reece, do you have any final comments here going into the weekend?
No, just the fact that Max Verstappen is doubling down on his Formula One 2026 rules criticism. Pretty much just saying get rid of hybrid engines. That's certainly a bit of an interesting development from Verstappen, who has spoken out against the 2026 regulations following his victory last weekend at the Austrian Grand Prix, declaring that the new cars look pretty terrible from what he has seen in Red Bull's simulations.
Yes, indeed. And we did go over that a bit on Monday. So yeah, go and check that video out as well. We went into more depth about what Verstappen was making out of those 2026 cars. And Toto Wolff has, however, since come out and said that it's absolute nonsense. And that he reckons the 2026 cars will be fantastic for overtaking and will do the jobs as necessary. So we've got the head of Mercedes versus Max Verstappen's opinions with regards to 2026 cars. The only way we'll tell is in 2026. So
I was going to say the exact same thing. How about we all just keep quiet and see what happens in 2026, then we can make decisions.
Exactly. We've still got 3 years left in the current model car. So let's just actually enjoy the present right now. Anyway, guys, that wraps up our preview for the Silverstone Grand Prix. Let us know in the comments your predictions for who's going to finish in the top 3. And I'm going to ask Reece just before the end of the video as well for his top 3. But otherwise, leave a comment down below, like the video, and do be sure to subscribe to the channel. So, Reece, your top 3. Go.
I'm going to try and mix it up a little bit. Yeah, I'm going to say Verstappen, Leclerc, Hamilton.
Okay, I was going to do
I think Hamilton gets on the podium this weekend.
I was going to do the exact same prediction. So,
well, no, you can't. Change it up.
So I'm going to change it ever so slightly. And you know what? I'm just going to throw a spanner in the works and somehow Red Bull mess up this weekend. It's not going to happen. But I'm just going to do it for the sake of it. Let's put Hamilton first, just for old time's sake. That'll
win in 2 years.
Yeah, that'll be a big thing, and at Silverstone, so that'll be a big thing. Hamilton first, Max Verstappen second, or maybe Max Verstappen crashes out. No, he won't. Hamilton first, Verstappen second, Leclerc third. Those are my predictions. And again, let us know in the comments, and also join us this weekend for all of the live watch-alongs and commentary through every single session. We'll start, of course, tomorrow with practice 1. F3 and F2, of course, also happening this weekend, so we'll be running those as part of the build-up to each session. Thank you guys so much for watching Forever Motorsports. I've been Mark, Reece has been Reece, and we'll check you again later. Cheerio.